Good morning, everyone. I'm audible.
Yes, you are wisdom. You're audible.
Good morning. Can anyone confirm if I'm audible, please?
Yes, you are audible.
Victoria, please can you confirm that I'm audible? Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, our listeners, for tuning in. And our speakers, thank you so much for honoring our invite and being here today. My name is Wisdom Aboyeme, and I am a policy analyst at Tech Hive Advisory. And this September edition of the behind maintaining child online safety in the age of artificial intelligence. So, in no particular order, I will let our speakers introduce themselves one after the other. Hello?
All right, I guess I'll go first, if that's all right. Hi, everyone. My name is Masadi Moloi. I am the Strategy and Partnerships partner at JSF and TSSA, and I also am part of the admin team as well at the Trust and Safety Africa Academy. I'm from Botswana, and my work primarily has been in cybersecurity, cyber safety, and recently branched out to trust and safety while working with JSF and the TSAA as well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, wisdom. Thank you for putting this together. My name is Manuela Aston. I'm a cybersecurity policy analyst and the founder of Safe Screens Initiative.
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I've been having a bit of technical issues today of all these, but just by way of introduction, my name is Adidolapo Evlin Adigoroye. I'm a privacy consultant by profession, and I'm passionate about child rights online.
Okay, I guess I'm the last person on the list. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omolara Esther Hamzat, and I'm a cybersecurity professional and advocate, and I currently work as a program analyst for ISCAS Education, and I specialize in cybersecurity education, governance, and advocacy. And recently, my focus has been on child online safety for teenagers, and I hope to have. Thank you. Thank you.
I think I've lost Esther there. Can anyone hear her? Can anyone hear me?
I think she was done with her introduction.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I need to sincerely apologize. I'm also having a bit of network issues myself. Please, if there's at any time you can't hear me, please call me back so I can go over what I said again. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for honoring our invite and being here today. For a brief introduction, just for me to give more context to this discussion. Yesterday, I read an article that said that over 8,000 children had their personal data stolen. Personal data included their name, their address, their pictures, and these cyber criminals are now asking for a ransom. This shows how crucial this conversation is we're having today. So I urge everyone to pay attention, listen, and drop questions in the chat box, and we're all willing to, provide answers to your question. So moving on, I would love to begin this conversation with Emanuela. Hi, Emanuela. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
So, how would you say AI is reshaping the online environment for children?
Okay, so I'd start first by saying one major way that AI is shaping the online conversation is through personalization, right? Algorithms are now currently being curated to fit what most times people spend their times on online. So the algorithm is collecting data, how much time you spend on a particular video, if you comment, your reaction, your emotions, all of those things are taken into consideration into, recommending similar versions of that content to you. Now, that can be a good thing, right? If, let's say, you are searching or you find yourself spending time on educational content. But on the flip side, if, for example, a child stumbles on the content that is not suitable for a child and out of curiosity watches that content, it means that the algorithm will continue recommending similar content to the child. And that's a very big harm. Another way I would say that AI is, another way is, the autoplay feature that we currently have, right? Most times when you open most of your apps, you open TikTok and videos are just playing. You open Instagram, videos are just playing, and that feature makes it easy for children to doom scroll, right? You're just going over videos and videos and videos, and that can have negative impacts. You have people who being isolated, not interacting with other people because they're spending so much time on social media, and autoplay has made that very easy, right? So that's a feature, and that's a way that AI has been integrated into making most of the social media spaces captivating, but they also have negative impacts. I think one of the aspects we could talk about is emotional reliance on AI bots. It's like AI companions. I was reading an article recently that was talking about how people were falling in love with their AI. My mind was blown. I'm like, how? And yes, I think one of the versions was recorded as a result of that emotional reliance and dependence. And you have people talking about how already talking about how heartbroken they are, that their boyfriend, or in quotes, their husband has been recalled. It's very devastating because children are in their defining age, and exposing them to that level of emotional reliance will definitely become counterproductive in the long run. So yes, those are some ways.
Yes, I really, really lean to most of the things you've already highlighted. I remember around last month, went on ChatGPT to give him therapy advice based on he was being bullied in school, and he said, "Oh, he should commit suicide." And I was like, "Oh, should I tell my mom?" And he's like, "No, don't tell your mom." And he went ahead to commit suicide. So this shows like how much impact it actually has on children. Now, from your question, I want to move to Esther. how would you say that AI systems exploit the natural curiosity of children, especially in their development? Their development are like formative years. Within the age of like 12, 13, 14, they're usually really curious.
Okay, thank you so much. And I apologize, I had a bit of network glitch while I was trying to do my intro. Thank you again for having me here. So, how this AI now exploits teenagers? I mean, I do a lot of awareness, and one of the first thing I like to do is to emphasize on the fact that kids are very curious, and their curiosity is a good thing, but also considering the AI age we find ourselves now, it can be something of negative effects and can be exploited. So I'll give you an example. I mean, Manuela has spoken on that earlier, saying all of how contents are being personalized based on things that children spend more time on scrolling and all of that. It's sort of like you have more of that feed coming in. There's just this endless scrolling features on social media now that makes it very difficult for, I mean, you can't just pick up your phone and decide that this is the end of my scrolling. I don't want to scroll anymore. You know, when I do this as an adult, I try to imagine for kids that are curious. I mean, you can't just continue to scroll endlessly. There's no end to this thing. That is one way that this can have negative effect on them. Another aspect to this is there's a concept called online grooming, right? Also, I'm going to refer back to some of the things Manuela has said because she started with like a very good intro. So you now have chat box in most of, not just even on social media, right? Even the gaming platform. I mean, some kids might be restricted to not even using social media. Let's use 12, 14, right? Their parent might not give them access to social media yet, but they make use of platform like Roblox, Minecraft, where they play games, right? And that game now are now integrated in a way that they are able to chat with friends from all over the world. That's one risk on its own. They are also embedded with chat box that these children can interact with. I know there's just this level of trust that let me not use the word trust. There's this level of openness that a child has at that age. They're quick to believe things, they're quick to rely on things, they're dependent at that age, right? So imagine when I play, imagine if a child plays Roadblock, is playing a game on Roblox or Minecraft. Let's even say they don't even have access to like external friends yet. Within the chat AI box that they use to say, okay, what game should I play next? Or what do you think about my performance? It's just side by side, just like saying you're having somebody invisible next to you that you're asking some of the questions while you're playing on that platform. The risk can be that that chat box might suggest harmful content to that kid. Another angle we can look at it is that chat bots can be exploited by a cyber threat actor, and you know that child can start to give out personal information that they're not supposed to give out. You know, it can be exploited that way, right? And also, it can be exploited in the sense that whosoever is, the cyber actor who maybe is able to explore that chat box, right? Some of those information would find their way to the dark web where it is exploited further. So these are like very long discussion that parents are not even aware of. I mean, parents might just be centered around, I don't want my child communicating with anybody outside, or I don't even want my child to have access to social media. But on what they really don't focus on is the fact that this chat box can be exploited. This chat box can suggest negative things to their children, and I think it's one of the ways this AI can have negative effect on children, and it can be exploited.
Yes, I really draw from what you said that the most times parents and educators are really not aware of most of these things because they themselves are not using these platforms. So my next question would be these AI driven practices, there are some subtle harms, honestly, that parents and educators, as you mentioned, don't really tend to notice. How do these harms affect children's autonomy and their behavior or their well-being?
Okay, bringing the question back to me. Okay, so just hold on. Okay, so it can affect their autonomy in different ways, right? So parents are quick to say, okay, because I want to be sure of what my child does online and all of that, I want to use parental control. Is one thing a parent wants to use parental control, is another thing a parent might not even be aware that they're supposed to use parental control. So let's start with parents who decide to use parental control. What you are um, unconsciously doing to that child is you're trying to say that you don't trust that child enough to make use of the internet. So my experience of creating security awareness for kids, I always say that it's important that you empower them more than you in quotes want to protect them from the harm, right? It's easy to tell a child that, oh, don't touch that fire. And it's really not going to make sense to them why I don't want them to touch fire or go close to the fire. But if I explain that if you go close to this fire, these are the harm, these are the danger, and all of that, it's going to make sense to that child. And if out of curiosity they go further to even touch it, it makes more sense to them, right? It's important that you help these children understand, because if you go ahead to make use of parental control without even telling them what they are supposed to understand, to the reason why you're having this thing in place, it means that that child might want to bypass some of the parental control that you have in place. We've seen kids bypass parental control. It's not enough to have parental control, right? You can have it, but your child will bypass it. You need to supervise. But in order for you to be on a safe ground, you need to help the children to understand what you're trying to protect them from, right? You also, parents will also need to pay attention to the fact that this app or platform app that their children make use of, right? There are several what is it called, criteria that they can use to check those apps, if those apps are safe enough for their children. So what amount of data are being collected? How is the data being processed? How is the data being handled, right? You don't want 10, 15 years to come and then you found your child's what is it called, identity being tarnished based on maybe previous mistake or previous digital footprints they made previously that they were not fully aware of, right? A lot of this, again, like I mentioned earlier, are being used wrongly in the dark web. So there are a lot of oh, I'm looking for the right word to use now. There's a lot of child sexual content in the dark web where people can use AI generated image. The body is different from the face, just crop, cut, bring, and all of that. These are like different ways, right? That I think if parents do more of awareness than just, oh, we don't want you doing this, we don't want you doing that, right? It can affect how that child communicates or open themselves to you, right? You don't want a case where a child is being bullied online and they find it very difficult to come to talk to you because of how you would handle it. So these are like very important points that I think parents need to pay attention of in the age of AI, and it's really going to help the child.
From what I get, like from what you've been saying, is that there's need to, in as much as you're protecting this child, as well, tell the child, okay, this is why I'm putting XYZ measure in place, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So this is leading to my next question. My next question is for Masadi. How do you engage? Let me rephrase this now. How can we draw the line? Yeah, like she mentioned, there's need for educational, there's need for awareness for the children. However, they leverage these platforms for educational purposes. So these platforms are used for good, yeah. But how can we draw the line between using these platforms for good and then and those platforms that become like manipulative and exploitative? So how can we draw that line as a society? Yes.
All right, can everybody see me? All right, thank you so much. So just to make sure that I've understood your question, the question is, how can we draw the line into which platforms can be beneficial towards society and what platforms need to be more regulated when it comes to society's use of them, correct? All right, so at GISF, a lot of what we do involves capacity building and lots of trainings and workshops that we host, not just for children, but for parents as well, and law enforcement individuals in government as well, where we educate them on a lot of the tools, a lot of the risks and the dangers in terms of using a lot of these technologies that are openly available to everyone, right? And as Omolara rightly stated, it's a very fine line that you're having to toe when it comes to the use of these technologies with children. Children are, the best way I can put it, that children are very, very perceptive, but they're also very gullible in some of the content that they're often exposed to online. I myself, as a parent, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I've limited quite a lot of her access to certain websites and to certain applications because I know the dangers of having too much freedom to access certain things, but it's also important for her to be able to build her skills in using online tools, in using the internet, and engaging with individuals. You can't protect your children from everything. We can't protect society as a whole from all the dangers that are out there, but it's our role as CSOs and as government as well to have measures of containment and measures of protection that we put into place for a lot of these tools. So in some of the work that we do engage with big tech in trying to come up with ways in which to better monitor and deal with some of the harms and the cases that do come about that are often funneled through our child hotline, our safety hotline services as well. One of the things that we found most interesting is that a lot of parents, when they first participate in our trainings, they have very little knowledge of a lot of the websites that their children are using, you know? And you have to understand that there's a generational gap when it comes to use of tech. A lot of Gen Alpha and Gen Z grew up with the internet right in their faces, correct? And as for millennials, which is the generation that I'm a part of, we essentially pioneered the use of chatting online, using websites, using applications. So for a lot of us, we were that first group that had unfiltered access to way too many things on the internet. So we saw firsthand the harms and the causes of having too much access to these things, but we were also able to navigate them ourselves, even though we had no business doing so. So now we have a generation of children that were born, discovered that, oh, there's such a thing as the internet. Children have smartphones and iPads and tablets from as early as 2 or 3 years old. So you have a child that knows how to use a device before they're able to speak and before they're able to write. So now you have a child that is far more advanced at using technology than the parent is, and you have to teach the parent how to put into place the right controls and device access for the children to ensure that they're not being overly exposed to certain types of content as well. And on the government end, it's more of a regulatory issue because there's a lot of websites and content that as a government you are able to limit access to, but that infringes and hinges on the freedoms of individuals to search whatever they want to search for, right? And you can't do that. But what you can do is you can capacitate individuals, parents, teachers, lawmakers, to show them, okay, these are some of the risks that we're currently seeing. You know, we know that child sexual abuse material is growing, especially in the age of AI. As Omolara stated, it's very, very easy to take a picture of a child and to superimpose it onto the body of either a child that has been previously abused or an adult or an AI-generated image. And those images can come back to haunt that individual years later. There's also a lot of blackmailing that we've seen happening where you would share your images with somebody that you've met online and you believe that this is a safe individual, not knowing that they're going to turn it around and use it to harm you. And a lot of the time, it's not some nefarious actor from dozens of countries away. It's usually somebody within the community that has figured out how to use this content, that has figured out a way to find information and to use it to their gain, right? So there's a lot of talk between big tech, government, and CSOs and the best ways in which to regulate what's available and how to best ensure that it's being policed correctly and people are safe. But it's a growing conversation. Trust and safety is a growing industry, and we are doing the best that we can to ensure that we're supporting not just the community and society, but government as well, to ensure that we're walking the fine line with that goes from being, okay, let's help protect the people, to nobody's allowed to do anything, nobody's allowed to touch anything, you can't access anything. That's authoritarian and rule. And we try to advise governments that, look, in as much as you can do all that you want to do, public education is one of the best ways that we're going to get ahead of this problem. And in as much as we have larger areas of internet penetration, especially in rural and urban areas, there's also the fact that the majority of people that are accessing a lot of these apps and services still aren't as open or educated to just how powerful some of these services are. So it's our role to go in and to help them navigate them as safely as possible, especially for their children, because the dangers are growing on a daily basis. In one of our previous webinars that we hosted, we had a parent come on and say that he found out that his child was receiving money from an older individual in the community, a taxi driver, and he bought her a phone, and the parents had no idea about this. And this is a 13-year-old, mind you. So you have to wonder, when she met this person, how they managed to establish this relationship, or rather, you can't even call it a relationship, how they established this communication where the child is now defying the parents' orders. And now it was at a stage where whatever the parent tried to do, it was difficult to step in and to say, look, you can't talk to this person, I'm taking these devices away. That's what we're trying to prevent. That's what we need to prevent, because the dangers are growing, and it's not just limited to Western society. And our societies here in Africa, it's growing by the day, because we have the largest youth population in the world. You know, the majority of the continent is youth. So we have a very, very big task ahead of us when it comes to that.
Thank you very much. It's very true that most times now everybody's head is either buried in one gadget or the other. Everybody has one social media app they are on. So the way technology is growing right now, it's so exponential. So that's my next question is for Dolapo. What ethical responsibility should technology companies, app developers bear in mind when designing AI systems?
I feel like you've asked everybody for the problem, now you're asking me for the solution. And the honest truth is, I could very easily tell you, bear in mind privacy principles, privacy by default, privacy by design, but I don't think that entirely solves the problem. First thing I'm going to say is child online protection should be looked at as a marathon, not as a sprint. So it's not an Olympic tick box. It's something that we're going to repeatedly or continuously have to improve upon as technology improves and the risk framework online improves. And I'll say why this is very important is that I'm today I'm not going to speak based on implement this or implement this solution or this principle that we already know, because again, like I said, I don't think this fully solves the problem, especially as technology continues to grow. I'll start with something that I used to see and believe that I no longer believe. When it comes to assessing harm for platforms, a lot of regulation will tell you that if the app is targeted at children or is likely to be used by children. But I'll say in this day and age, which app or platform doesn't have that in the first place? Whether it's your social media platforms, which now have AI embedded in it, whether they are saying the age to use this is 13 or 16. It doesn't matter. Children below those ages are using them. I've had, my cousin text me or family members or my little nieces and nephews text me on their mother's phone, or they get a tablet and they're texting me. And when I realize, oh, I'm texting with my little niece, I'm also very scared for them, because I then realized that they are exposed to things that I rather would not have them exposed to. So beyond saying, oh, if the app is targeted at children or likely to be used at children, is first, I think, assuming that more often than not, platforms will be accessed by children. So first is, how then do we design for them in mind? And I think this is where a lot of research comes in, because research will tell you, oh, although this particular social media platform, for instance, says that the age of use is 13, research has shown us that children between the ages of 10 to 13 are already using this app. So how then do we implement measures for them? And even while thinking about what we can do, is what questions should come into the mind of a policymaker or a platform designer or any of those categories of stakeholders. Is first is understanding that although all children have vulnerability, the level of vulnerability differs. So the mind of a 10-year-old is different from the mind of a 13-year-old, and the dangers that those, or 16-year-old, the dangers that those categories of children are susceptible to are very different. So you then also need to design or implement safeguards and measures per age grade. And I'll give a very simple example. A child of, while it's still possible, but the possibility of a child or a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old trusting someone online is slightly slimmer than that of a 10-year-old or even a 12-year-old. So we then need to design in mind with those 8 categories. So not even necessarily collecting personal information during registration, but if you know as simple as the age grade of a child, then what you need to target is the kind of safeguard that you need to implement is a bit easier, not necessarily, a bit easier, or you can now target safeguards to particular harms that exist. Another very important question that I would, or another very important way that I would like us to approach this, is ensuring that when it's a child or a person below a certain age that's using this platform, certain features of those platforms are not enabled. And for instance, I'll say if a child below the age of 15 or 16 is using a platform, then there should be no targeted apps on that platform, for instance. And why would I say that? Because targeted apps or targeted targeted apps targeted ads can range from several things. So as an example of understanding, or to sort of see and understand what the problem is, the legal age for being able to access alcohol is, I say, 16 to 18, depending on the jurisdiction. But if a child is on one of these platforms and does see an ad that is promoting that very thing, which it shouldn't have, to which they shouldn't have access to, you say that then there's a problem, because it's ethically they shouldn't have access, but they are being targeted, or they're receiving targeted ads for those particular things. So I'll say, also considering that when safeguards are being implemented, the age grade of the user should matter. Also now looking, if like I said again, it's supposed to be a marathon and not a sprint. So if continuous research and evaluation of a particular platform has shown that a lot more children are using that platform, or children between the age of 10 to 13 are using a platform that essentially was designed for adults or teenagers, what then is the next best thing? Is asking the platform or the designer asking questions like, oh, do we then design a version of this platform for the younger generation, for instance? And I'll say, using the YouTube model, while not every company is a big tech or is a big player in the industry, and they can't afford to all of that, I say it's still a viable option if it's possible, right? So if we've had, a lot of users under this age, do we design a version for them? Is that a possible solution to the problem? And I think all of these things is, and the reason why I'm not really giving the, implement privacy by design, parental controls as well, why they are a solution. I believe that there are a lot of ways to bypass it. Children have found really amazing ways of bypassing a lot of these things. Sometimes is, and there's a limit to what parental control can solve. So I'm not sure all platforms, for instance, have the feature where a parent can limit how much time a child spends online and the app automatically goes off. But even that, I know that a lot of times these things or these platforms or these features can be bypassed. So I'll say is designing from the very first stage, designing with kids in mind, whether your app is targeted at kids or not, ensuring that parental controls are easily accessible. In fact, it could be as basic as implementing nudges that help parents understand how to implement some of these parental controls. It could also be as simple as gamifying privacy or gamifying security or safeguards, so children understand better some of these principles, and even parents as well understand some of these principles. And I think lastly, I'm going to round up by saying that again, child safety online is not an Olympic tick box. It's something that researchers, CSOs, the platform owners as well will have to continuously build and improve and conduct research to see how their platform affects children year in, year out.
Thank you very much, Dolapo, for that detailed approach. I really like that as well. So you mentioned the fact that the way you painted this picture, yeah, it's not just from the tech end. The parents, the children themselves, they are all involved in this process, right? So, how can schools, regulators, and parents assess when the use of AI crosses the ethical boundaries in relation to children? This for Manuela.
Hi,
Manuela.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, like Dolapo pointed out, and I think one of the other speakers also mentioned it. Some of these rules that we currently have in place, safety by design, data minimization, and all of those things, they are very important principles when we start talking about ethics in the use of AI. However, the line is very thin. Right, the line is very thin between protecting the rights of children and stifling innovations and other infringing on other forms of rights, right? Which one of the speakers mentioned. So it makes it very dicey to highlight some of these things. Another factor is the fact that most times tools out the gate are not necessarily tools that you can say, oh, there's certain risk of not even able to preempt from the beginning. Take for example, people falling in love with their AI chatbots or AI companions. You're thinking, okay, what's going on? Right. So also have instances of people, parents creating, fun, happy, loving content with their children. In fact, that's become a trend in recent times where we have doing family content. And then you realize that on the flip side, people are, taking images and pictures of children and using new defined apps to create explicit content out of those images. So a lot of these things sometimes out of the gate are not things that you can necessarily say, we can preempt that this exact risk or harm can happen. And so again, it makes the line very blurry. However, at the basic level and to the extent to which we understand AI, considering that AI is fast evolving, constantly, rapidly evolving. But to the extent to which we understand it now, I think that there are certain, themes or concepts that we can look out for to say, okay, this might be crossing an ethical boundary. One of them would be where an app that is designed for children is designed in such a way that a child cannot easily disengage from the app. So let's say, for example, a child is using a platform that, if I leave now, I lose my progress. That automatically keeps the child hooked. And so that shows that as opposed to, protecting the interest of the child, we're looking at commercialization in that instance. So, for example, I'll use an example of us growing up. Growing up, we had this thing, social media app called To Go, and well, I sound like an old person, but yeah, To Go, right? And then you had those levels, novice, professional, amateur, all of those things, and it's like a reward system that just keeps you glued. Right. So while that can be, a form of motivation for learning platforms, it can also be something that is crossing the line in terms of protecting the interests of children, right? Keeping them glued and extending screen time. I think another thing we could consider is also, one of the ethical considerations definitely is data minimization. What kind of data are you collecting from children? And so in such instance, when social media platforms or themselves or create a system where more data than is necessary can be given out or can be exposed, right, from children, then that becomes a problem, and that becomes that's crossing the line for ethical consideration. I think another thing that we can consider is bias. Most of these platforms are, created based on data. Data currently is the global currency, right? So if we're creating apps, we're creating most of these AI tools based on data, and data can sometimes be regionalized, right? So tools that are being used in Africa are based on data created in the West. And so let's say, for example, something that affects children, beauty standards, right? So a data based on accumulated based on public beauty standard in the West is used to create a platform that children here in Africa uses. That automatically becomes a problem because that data or that tool would highlight or emphasize a particular beauty standard that is not applicable here. And then we have children, at such young age having low self-esteem, struggling with their body image, right? So data bias or the bias is something that needs to be considered in ethical consideration. So when we have AI tools that their outputs can trace to a particular bias like racism and targeted against people with disabilities, all of those things, it can really affect children and has definitely crossed the line. So I think those are like major key points that I think that we can look out to consider. Okay, at what point has this crossed over from just being a tool that students or children can enjoy to commercialization and exploiting kids in and leading to vulnerabilities essentially. Yeah, thank you.
You very much. You mentioned data protection concerns. Yeah, I want to ask Dolapo, do you think that do you think there are sufficient existing customer rights and data protection laws in place to protect children against AI risks in Africa?
To be honest, so when it comes to questions around whether there whether regulatory measures are adequate, is first I believe there will always be regulatory gaps. And if there will always be regulatory gaps, it's first looking at what do we have now, how are we leveraging or implementing the current systems and controls that we have now? Because if we're looking at the AI legislation or regulatory framework across Africa, it's really not a system that's developed. Even where there are laws, how many of these laws are being implemented or tested, right? So I'll say, as opposed to really looking at it from are there regulatory gaps, or do we have enough regulation, is how are current systems being implemented. Like, usually it's the saying of, we have bigger fish to fry. I think Africa has smaller fish to fry first. And looking also, for me, it's also going from, okay, with the current regulations that we have, how do we leverage or implement the ones that we currently have, but also looking at what is the framework we have to layer AI on. You look at the level of literacy, internet penetration, all of these things are things that we need to consider, because AI is fast developing, and we'll we're already sort of being left behind, because first we need to solve these problems before we before we start even thinking about designing. Because more often than not, nobody's going to design a system that works for you. Africa needs to tell its own story. Africa needs to design for Africa, right? So we need to solve all of these problems, or look into these problems. We're talking about training people or training children first. I know that two of the speakers mentioned a lot about training children and on how to interact with some of these platforms. So, we're proposing training children on how to interact with AI platforms. Are we training children in their local language in terms of interaction? Are we training them when some of these kids are not even literate enough? All of these things are very important pieces that we need to consider when looking at how AI affects children in Africa, looking at the risk framework for AI in Africa. So I'll say that yes, there are regulatory gaps. There will always be regulatory gaps. But more important than regulatory gaps is understanding what is the local framework that currently exists, and how are we solving for or implementing measures to safeguard kids within the African context.
Thank you very much. I was not really hearing most of what you said. I sincerely apologize that my network went off a bit. But yeah, I would love to circle back to Esther. What role can parents and educators play in equipping children to recognize AI influences online?
Thank you so much. I think I've answered that earlier, but I'll just come back to all of that. So there's a lot of things we can let children understand when it comes to the digital world that they find themselves in. First, we need to help them understand that their physical safety, their physical security, right, their online safety, their online security is as important as their physical safety, right? Places you don't want mommy to want you to go applies to the app you shouldn't use online. So it brings me back to what I said earlier about that it's so important that you help your children understand the dangers that are online. So I recently launched my book that talks about cybersecurity for teens, and I wrote it out of my years of creating awareness for teenagers, right? For every time I go to create awareness in school or teenagers church, right? You always hear things like they don't even know, or they don't see it in the light of how you see it, or you're helping them see it now, right? I'll use an example of cyberbullying, right? When you talk about physical bullying, it's quick for a child to understand that, oh, that is harmful, that's not good, and all of that. But if you don't come to like really help them understand that cyberbullying is as the harm that comes with online bullying, right, would negatively impact the person as much as the physical bullying will impact that person, right? It's just quick for you to say, oh, because it's social media, I can just hide behind my keypad and just type whatever I want to type, and I don't take it to heart. But when you help them understand that this has like a very negative impact on whosoever you're saying that to, right? You're helping them understand, right? It's very important that parents help teenagers, children, right, understand all of these dangers that they can face online, right? Tell them about online grooming. Help them understand that they can't just trust anybody that they see online, right? Not everybody who is friendly, not everybody who claims to be your friend is your friend, right? You need to help them understand that the internet is just a big space where anybody and everybody just walks in and walks out from, right? You want to help them understand that as much as you protect our physical, as much as we protect our physical space, that's how much children are expected to also be careful what they do on the internet, right? And it's a collective role, both parents and educators in school, right? Sometimes the child might not find the confidence to trust, might not find the confidence to talk to the parents about maybe if they experience cyberbullying online, right? They might be more comfortable sharing with their parents that they've been able to experience certain things online, right? And that means that you've been able to build that trust, you've been able to give them that platform where they can come to say things that they experience while using the internet, right? So awareness is like one major thing, right? And it's just, I think somebody mentioned that it's not a one-time off race, right? It's a continuous thing that you have to do for your child, right? Whether they are 10, whether they are 12, whether they are 5, whether they are 6, right? The way you explain physical safety to them is also how you need to ensure that as a parent, you help them understand their online safety. It's not rocket science, right? It's not rocket science. The way you tell them, oh, don't trust a stranger when you see them, like don't collect anything from like a physical stranger. So also help them understand that they can't trust anybody that they see on the internet. There was an event I attended sometime last year, and then I think with the Nigerian police, and it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for me because I think a parent was complaining that a child of 13 ran off with an internet stranger, somebody she met on social media, and they've been able to build relationship over time and just run off, like just left the house and went to meet the person, like, and then unknown to her that that person has trafficking in mind. I mean, it's not even a good intention. So that child, from like just interaction, social media, and all of that, run off completely with a total stranger, becomes a victim of trafficking. There was just a lot of back and forth on how they can even bring that child back home. And it's something that immediately in that room where they were trying to explain that, I could see on parents' faces that, oh, people were like, oh, that's why I don't want my child to make use of the internet, or that's why I'm not going to allow my child make use of phone until they are 14, 15, until they are 16. And I'm like, that's not even the solution. Because whether you allow them use mobile phone at home or not, they have friends. They'll use it in school. They'll meet people outside. They'll steal your phone to use, right? So awareness is like a 101 that is very important for educators, for parents, right? They have a major role to play in that, in ensuring that children understand that in the age of AI, there's a lot of role they have to play from their end, right? Until we're able to get government, until we're able to get this platform accountable, right? Parents will continue to play their role from their end to ensure that children are aware of these risks and they empower on how they can manage them independently. Your child should be able to tell another child who is not aware that, oh, I don't think you should do that on social media. Your child should be the one telling another child not to cyberbully somebody else, right? Because you've empowered them. You've not just made them aware, you've also empowered them. And that way they're able to pass the information to their peers. And it's just hand to hand. And until we get the future we desire when it comes to this digital age, parents and educators will continue to play their role in ensuring that these children are aware and how they can manage it independently.
If I can just quickly add, is that AI, in this age of AI knows us. Like it's not just a flat platform, it's a platform that currently consistently interacts with humans, individuals, and consistently builds profiles of them. Beyond, or also with training comes also educating parents on what to put out about their child, what information to put up about their child, basic things as, and I say basic because it should be basic, but it's not always basic. Basic things as, not posting your child in your uniform, or posting interactions with your children and their aunties or uncles or family members or close relatives, because with AI knowing and interacting with us, it also means that more often than not, things around cyber attacks, they are more targeted. They are not just random guesswork. It's more targeted, more specialized, because there's already data that backs up what these attackers are doing. So it's very important it's very important for parents to also have understanding of for themselves, training themselves on, okay, or being trained rather, not training themselves, being trained on what they should put out or the information they should share about their child or not, from a very early age, and also educating their own children on what information they can or cannot post online, what interactions should a child believe a message is from her aunt if probably the page is filled with pictures of the aunt and the child, or the message says, "Oh, hi, it's your favorite auntie." But on the mother's page, it's clear to everybody that that's the girl's favorite aunt in the first place. So it's very important to also know or train parents, children on what they should or should not post online, or to limit their digital footprint, essentially.
Yes, that's completely and absolutely right. Most people just post anything, even their children's uniform. They take pictures and then their house address shows in the background. They see me, it's okay, don't worry, nobody really knows me. It's good that we are aware about that. I want to circle back to Esther on something. I want to understand, what is your take on the debate on whether children, particularly preteens, should be on the internet?
Okay, thank you. So I mean, I've heard people ask that question oftentimes, that when the parent think is the perfect time that children should have access to the internet. And this is not a question that has a one size fits answer for everybody. It's not a one size fits for, there's no one particular answer. I can't say 13, I can't say 15, because region is going to first, region is going to differ how different parents will entrust their children with mobile phone or not, right? Parent exposure, environment will also determine the age at which children will have access and not have access, right? But again, it's still going to bring me back to the fact that I don't think it's a safe place for parents to be, that they think that, oh, because they don't want their children to be exposed to certain risks is like the major reason why they are not going to have that. They're not going to allow children have access to digital devices. So I explained this. So somebody can say because of maybe their neighbor's experience that a child got kidnapped or a child misused the internet is why they want to wait until that child is 16 or 15 before they can give them mobile device. I mean, it's okay. We can go on and on and on and talk about all of the dangers that comes with AI, that comes with the digital age, right? But we can't remove the fact that the internet is very essential, right? It's a creative platform for children, it's a learning platform for children. So you don't want to deprive your child that benefits that they would enjoy from using AI, from using the internet, and say, oh, completely no, it's just school and you're not going to have any access, right? Most schools now make it compulsory that children even have devices. So whether you want it or not, most schools, I mean, it's part of the requirement that your child is going to own a digital device for assignment purposes, for research purposes, right? Those are like requirements that might affect how quick your child is going to have access to a digital device and not have access to the device. But again, as a parent, right, you can prep your child, right? You can empower them with the right knowledge and the skills, right? And you can decide that 13 is a good time. You can decide 14 is a good time. But I mean, I'm taking the age too far. I mean, a child of 5 has access to a phone to watch CoComelon, to watch CoComelon by 2, 3, 4. Sometimes they're using YouTube, right? They might not fully encode. I mean, my niece is an example. She might not fully understand everything on your phone, but she knows how to find her way to YouTube and then open CoComelon, right? She might not pay attention to any other thing on that phone, but like she just have to find her way or something, right? So that means that it's not a thing of my child is going to have access to digital device or not. It still cycles us back to awareness, empower them, and then you empower them enough to be able to trust them with that device, right? Parents, I mean, the decision is still going to be left to parents to decide what age they want it to be. And whatever age they decide, right, it is still your responsibility as a parent to ensure that you supervise them enough, you equip them with the right knowledge, right, and then you ensure that sometimes this app or whatsoever your whatsoever platform your child interacts with is something that, okay, you can go through together. Can your child let you have their phone for 5 minutes without panicking or freaking out? I mean, that can be an eye opener to whatever that child is using that phone for and all of that. So I think it's is left for the parents to decide what age is perfect, but they shouldn't. The decision should not be centered around the panic and fear and all of that, because there are a lot of different there are a lot of impacts that that child will be missing out on if you decide to focus just on like the negative aspect of it. So put the positive aspects in mind and decide what age is perfect for a child to make use of a mobile phone.
It's all to be decided. I will have to put the positive benefits of technology in mind, and then let our children know that, okay, this is on the internet, this happens on the internet as well, so please protect yourself. So I'm going to circle back quickly to Mosari. What steps can government platforms and advocacy groups take to embed privacy, to embed transparency, accountability, and safe designs in AI systems?
It always comes back to consultation and engagement with big tech and these platforms as well. You can put into place laws, regulations, but if you're not in constant communication with the providers of these services, it's very difficult to sort of implement them. So there has to be that constant engagement with the platforms as well, and agreements to say, look, this is what we as a government have agreed on in terms of the framework and the laws and the policies regarding certain services and aspects of cybersecurity. And this is what your platform has to agree to in order to ensure that the protocols are in place. And this differs from country to country, region to region. We already know that the EU has some of the strongest data protection laws around. They are very, very strict when it comes to what platforms are allowed to do, what platforms are not allowed to do, what content is shown online, and how long it has to be kept and stored online for as well, right? We also see that there's a lot of censorship that's also happening in certain regions as well, where governments are deciding that certain applications they don't want any of the citizens to have access to. We know that China has a blanket ban on TikTok, so they came up with their own version of TikTok, which is highly monitored by the Chinese government as well. These are some of the things that governments do that can be seen as progressive to others, but regressive to some, where they implement their own forms and labels of protection and monitoring to ensure adherence to the regulatory platforms, frameworks that they have in place, correct? Now, I can only speak to the Southern African region, not so much to the Ghanaian and Nigerian region, because I don't live there. I would do wish one of my colleagues was on the call to answer this thoroughly. But we do, in Ghana, we do work quite extensively with the Ghanaian government and the Cybersecurity Authority actually to address some of the gaps in the regulatory frameworks that can ensure that there is more adhesion and adherence to the frameworks to ensure that there are greater protections in place for children and other users online as well. When it comes to the Southern African region, we do not have a strong regulatory frameworks as Western Africa has at the moment. Here in Botswana, we are only just now implementing our Cybersecurity and Data Protection Act, which was tabled a good 5 years ago in our parliament, and it's taken this long for it to be implemented. And that's because of all the different frameworks and participants that have to ensure that they're in adherence to the frameworks in particular. So it's not a very straightforward approach that you can take when it comes to, okay, this is what we want to do to protect our citizens, to protect children. As big tech, as a provider, this is what we need you to do as well. It has to be a consistent, ongoing communication with them, like I said, at all times. And as CSOs, our role is to ensure that we come in to both highlight the pros and the cons that both big tech and government can come together on to ensure that whatever agreement is then put in place going forward, the measures are not draconian in nature. You're not infringing on the rights of individuals, but you're also ensuring that the protections that you're putting in place are adequate enough, that there's also reasonable lines of reporting available as well when there is a data breach, when there is a crime that has been committed, when there is a need to come in and say, okay, this is what is going on. How are we then going to respond to this issue to ensure that we stay on top of it and that the adequate protections are still functioning the way they're meant to function?
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. There's a question here leading to what you've said so far. The question says, Australia has implemented a ban on social media for children under the age of 16. Do you think countries should adopt this?
That is very, very controversial for a large number of reasons. The first being that it's seen as, for some individuals, they would see it as an infringement on basic human rights, which is access to information, to media as well. And from a personal standpoint, I do believe that there need to be certain levels of access that children can have. And I say children because up until the age of 18, anybody under that age is considered a child. Any decision that you take, any action that you take is always going to be under the lens of this individual is not matured enough or has developed enough in terms of cortex to the point where they can make decisions so soundly of their own accord. As a child, you are always going to have to defer to what your parents say or think. And there are those who think that I know better than my parents. I know what's good for me. I know what I want to do with my life, right? But we've seen how addictive social media can be. We've seen the general degradation when it comes to social norms, education, in a lot of these children up until now. For instance, when you look at the prevalent use of social media, what's the word I'm looking for? Our attention span in general has gone down. It used to be that you could focus for up to 30 to 45 minutes on any one topic at any given point in time. But now it's come to the point where 2 minutes is too long for any individual to stay focused on a topic. That's why you'll find that somebody can have the TV going, the laptop is there, they're working on their laptop, the TV is going, and they're also scrolling on their phone at the same time. And it's not because they're multitasking, no, it's because they can't pay attention to one single activity for a prolonged period of time. They need that constant noise in the background to actually allow them to get through whatever it is that they're doing. And this also plays out in children as well. These same children that you've given devices to at very young ages can't pay attention in class when the teacher is doing classwork. They struggle to finish their homework. The reading and maths aptitude scores are far below the level that they're supposed to be at. And part of this is due to unfiltered access to social media and devices as well. And we're not saying that it's all bad and all children need to be banned forever, but I do think that it's a contextual and a case-by-case issue. And for a government to take an approach to say, we're going to just ban all social media use, internet access to individuals under the age of 16, some might applaud it, but for others it might be seen as being very authoritarian in nature, and there could be some serious fallbacks from making a decision like this. I do know that it's not just Australia, but I believe, I'm not sure which country it is in Europe, that's also taken the same decision as well, to ban access to social media and to devices for children under a certain age. And one of the arguments that they do fall back on is we didn't have cell phones, smartphones 25 to 30 years ago. It was more of certain people had them, but not everybody had them, and we managed just fine. Kids did well in school, parents knew where their children were, society was all right without them. We can go right back to that, but the truth is that we can't. Society develops at an astronomical rate, and where we are right now, to take away that access to certain individuals might mean regression for some people. And it's important to protect children and to keep them from a lot of the dangers that are available out there online. But it needs to be an ongoing conversation, and it also needs to lead back to the parenting as well. This is essentially your government stepping in to do the parenting for you, because they're saying that we do not trust you enough to actively parent your children to keep them away from the dangers that are available online. And that is very troublesome thinking to have. And that's why I do think that while it may work for some countries, I'm not quite sure that a blanket ban approach is where we need to be going when it comes to how we are maintaining safety online for children and how we are supporting parents and educators in that role as well.
Yes, I believe you've done total justice to this question. Thank you very much. We have about 3 more questions in the chat box. I'll quickly run through some of them. Our time is a little bit limited, so I'll run through them. The first question is, AI moderation systems are known to have biases. What risks do these biases pose to children from vulnerable communities, e.g., minorities, neurodiverse children, those in developing countries? And how can we design child-safe AI that is inclusive and fair? That's the first question. Esther, can you help us with this? Esther? Am I audible, or should I take the question again?
Okay, confirm you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay. Please, can you take the question again?
It says AI moderation systems are known to have biases. What risk do these biases pose to children from vulnerable communities? How can we design safe child AI that is inclusive and fair?
Okay. So just hold on, let me turn on my camera. Okay, so AI moderation system. Using AI as a moderation system, we're trying to prevent children from the risks of AI, and there's now a AI moderation system, right? So of course there will definitely be biases depending on the region. Data that feed into AI, we would all agree are biased, right? So the focus, let me say, for example, the way the moderation system will work for a child in a particular region might differ from another child in another region, and that can lead to negligence on the part that is assumed to not to require enough moderation, and then might be too much on the side where the focus is, and can lead to distrust for the child, right? It might okay, so I think earlier I was trying to explain that parental control is good for children, right? But another signal is sent to children, because I remember having a conversation around that where a child was like, oh, why should my mom go through my phone? It means she doesn't trust me enough. Or why should my parents go through my devices or try to moderate it? It means they don't trust me enough or something. It's easier to do it for younger kids, but when you come to teenagers, I don't want to use the word that teenagers are a bit rebellious or have a mind of their own. So you have to be very strategic at how you deal with children around that particular age. So when it comes to moderation system, right? If there's a way to find the balance, find the balance so it's not overstimulated on one end or is understimulated on another end, right? And then I think the last portion of that question says, how can we design child-safe AI that is inclusive and fair? So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to the use of AI, right? There's still a lot of fine-tuning that is being done in all of the data that is imputed into machine learning and all of that, right? So there's a lot of work to be done on the part of the developers. They can use, I think there's a framework called child impact assessment, right? They can use that to sort of like audit if this whether platforms or software are what's it called, are suitable for the kids that they are being designed for, right? That means before you deploy it, you look at it from the eye of a kid, like what would they be seeing, how would they be experiencing it, and all of that, right? You want to ensure that this the app that is being designed, right, benefits the child more. I'm not saying it shouldn't benefit the developer or the developing the company developing it or the platform, right? I'm just saying that the child's best interest should be at heart than the profit, and then also there should be a focus on like the long-term benefits on that child, right? If you might just be quick to say, okay, it benefits the child. How about long-term goal? Right, we've had cases where parents take digital devices away from kids, and you can see how like it has like a very huge impact on them. That child may be unable to eat or something. I mean, some child just go extra to like maybe cause harm to themselves or their house or something. So these are some of like the different roles. Developers has role to play, the government have their role to play, parents would have their role to play until we can get what we desire, until we're able to get what we desire when it comes to the use of AI.
Yeah, so please can I quickly speak to that, because I mentioned this bias the first time when I was talking about the ethical considerations. Just to confirm, please, can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. So I just wanted to emphasize that AI bias reflects human bias. So if there's, because the AI or the algorithm itself is incapable of, possessing some of these mindsets. So these things emphasize human bias, and one reason why that's a major risk is that based on that bias, it produces outputs that then children take in, right? So if AI is based on the data set of a country where, being, let's say in a country where using a word like, gobsmacked or some of those words is not considered in something that should be in the vocabulary of an average person, then you have other countries where the vocabulary is more advanced and a student writes something, like children, they write something of their learning. You put that through, AI detection systems, and they tell you, oh, this is AI written, right? So those biases can enforce those kind of things where students are like, okay, I wrote this myself, because the data set in certain regions that might have been used to create that algorithm has made it made certain rules and enforces those bias, right? So if you have those instances where they say, oh, this region, once you get to a certain weight, you're considered ugly, automatically it would enforce that kind of bias in the minds of children. And like we mentioned earlier, children are very impressionable. And so it's risky to have them having outputs that can reflect certain biases that they doesn't reflect their own reality, right? So when we now talk about designing child-free or child-safe AI tools. It blows my mind that we'll talk about designing tools for children without involving children, their parents or guardians in the design making process, right? You just find out that a tool is made. I'm saying this tool is designed for children, but okay, yes. So how did we come to that conclusion? Well, what assessment was taken to come to that conclusion that as a child, me as a child, if I was a child, like if I was 15, 14, I could say, oh, this is safe for me to use based on my limited understanding, or this is how this would impact me. Of course, their understanding is not as advanced to know the level of risk, but involving them in the process makes it easy to design things that would interest them, but at the same time not trap them, right? And that thing is that we should, just the data sets used in creating most of these AI tools should be diverse, right? It definitely should. But like Dolapo said in the course of our speaking, Africa needs to tell the story. Because if I'm creating my own tool somewhere else, I'm definitely using data set available to me within my region based on what I know, based on all of those things. So we have people that are actively doing the work. I happen to be in a room where we're talking about creating AI tools that can speak Yoruba, speak English, speak local languages, right? And which would mean that they're fed data from these areas. So for us to be able to create something, a tool that is inclusive, then the data set involved itself needs to be diverse. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you very much for all the insights that have been thrown around. This is we have very limited time. I think we have like only 2 minutes left, so we have to draw the curtain here. This has been a very, very insightful conversation. I believe our audience they've learned 18 or 2, if not more than 18 or 2, I believe so. So before we go, I would like to mention that the recording of the session will be shared. All questions that were unanswered will be answered and to be shared as well. Also, we will be sharing a safety toolkit as well as a reporting guide. So in the instance of having any physical occurrence around you, you can know how to make like an appropriate report. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, our speakers. We're so grateful to have you on the call today. This has been a really, really amazing time. Personally, I had an amazing time. Thank you so much, everybody. And we will draw the curtain here for now. We will see you same time next month. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.